Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video I'm going to be taking you through my loot results for 20 maximum juice beach maps, fractured, 5 delirium orbs, sections cannot be consumed, the works, missing a few bits and pieces, but other than that, we're going to take a look at how much you can expect to earn from these maps. So you'll see in the background here just some footage. So let's quickly get into a few nitty gritty details and then we'll get into the loot. So the first thing you guys are going to want to know is what tier is this. So the tier of the map is actually tier 14. So why did I go with tier 14? So the primary reason is that in tier 16 it was getting a little bit too hectic for my gear and build level so far. Maybe with a bit more gear I could hack it, but currently tier 14 seems to be the sweet spot for me. I can pretty much 100% clear these without breaking any of them, which is the main thing for me. I'm sure a lot of other builds probably do a lot better, but I'm a bit of a diehard TS fan, so that's what I'll be sticking with. So T14, and the Delirium orb of choice here is Blight. So we're starting off with Blight. We might tackle a few of the other ones later on to compare them, which could be pretty cool. But yeah, I did a stream and we did the maps and it was pretty crazy. And we have the results in here. I will quickly go over what else I put on the map, just so you guys have a pretty good yardstick of what to measure yourself up against. And we'll jump in game now to take a look at that now. So let's hop in. So as I mentioned, I was doing tier 14 beaches. We'll quickly take a look at the map. This is the one here. So I fractured it with Beyond. If you guys are curious about these kind of maps, you can check out my previous video on how to make them, run them, and what kind of build you probably want for these. But yeah, so I've been fracturing this map. We fractured it 20 times. I think we got about 3 reflect maps, so they had a little bit less loot in them. The sextant modifiers I was using were Hunted Traders, currency from Nemesis monsters, Beyond, and I was using worm barrels, which is the 35% clusters of barrels, but worm type. And then when I got reflect, I swapped in mirrored monsters. So that is the setup. In terms of scarabs, we were using Polished Legion, Gilded Breach, Polished Harbinger, and Polished Reliquary. So those were the 4 I was using, and that worked out pretty well for me as well. On Zana, we were rolling Nemesis. I did use a few Alvas here and there, but not too many of them. I don't really think that this is probably worth including, so for the purpose of this video, we'd probably say I didn't really do them. My build isn't at a point where I can really reliably do them. I do often get one shot by the chaos damage, so I guess we'll exclude that for the purpose of this video. So yeah, no Alva. So things that are missing here, which you could take to the next level. Prophecies. You could be running stuff like Plague of Frogs, Cursed Choir, etc. Or some boxes if you wanted to do that. And you could be running Alvas successfully. So those are 2 things which are probably going to net you a lot more loot. So loot, what am I talking about here? I am talking about Delirium tiles. These things here in the bottom left. Every time you kill an amount of monsters, it's going to fill up a tile and drop whatever Delirium orb type worth of loot on the floor times 5. So here we're doing Blight. So what we're getting is oils and blighted maps. So that's pretty interesting. Obviously for the different types, you will get different things. There's stuff like scarabs if you want to go with that. But in this video, we're taking a look at Blight. So the premise of this test was to understand how much loot you get just from the base map versus how much from the tiles. So on average, with my current setup with no Alva or Prophecy, I was getting around 10 to 11 fills of the tiles each time. Also keeping in mind, I was not using the garden at all, mainly because I want to keep that for crafting. You can probably get an extra 2 tiles worth of loot. So 2 additional bars if you use the garden and fill it up with plants and like plant them all and So basically what I'm getting at here is this is a super honest, minimalistic kind of investment and view of how much you can expect to get from these maps. So let's dive into the results and we'll see how much you can expect to earn. So let's get into game. So here we are. Let's take a quick look first at the tabs. So I've sorted this out pretty well now. I've taken out all of the things that I would not consider selling, stuff like incubators, stuff like fragments, like ash splinters and stuff like that. And in the final report, I've also excluded stuff like vessels and sacrificial fragments because, I mean, those aren't things that I really particularly like to sell, and I'm not going to include them for the purpose of this video either. So as you can see here, we have a ton of maps. A quick tip with these guys is you can sell a bulk maps if you have a lot of them for 3 chaos each because people like to run them for the seeds. So this is a ton of money already, which is pretty crazy. We got a ton of tabulars, some other unique items with special emphasis on calamitous visions here. So this is a special cluster jewel that drops off one of 2 unique monsters in your 100% delirious maps. I think they're called, actually I don't remember the names, but the big guys, the big delirium guys. So this has a chance at dropping. I believe this is worth about 19 exalt at the time of this video. We also did get another one, Natural Affinity. They seem to have a pretty even weighting. I've gotten 2 of these now, as well as a few other ones. So I don't think that this one's particularly more rare. I think it's just more sought after, but all of them are fairly rare. So that's pretty interesting indeed. You know, mixed rarity kind of uniques. We got a Shavs, etc. So that's the not so interesting part. Let's get to the interesting part. We got an absolute metric ton of blighted maps. So keep in mind, this is from 20 maps that we got all of these blighted maps. Completely insane. In terms of simulacrums, it looks like we got 7 here. It's about 7 and like 2/3, which is pretty crazy as well. It's definitely a decent chunk of change with them coming in at 2.4 exalts each. Which is pretty insane. And then of course from the Nemesis drops 3 additional currency items. Look at all this cheddar, completely broken, which is pretty cool. And from raw currency we got 9 exalts. That's an exalt every other map, which is completely crazy. 9 divines and 4 annulments. So very cool indeed. But let's get into a more detailed breakdown now of what we got here so we can understand the financials. So let's look at the expenses. Of course, you need 20 fractured fossils, and I've also included the 20 chaotic resonators here. So our buy-in cost currently at the making of this video, if you were to copy me exactly, is around 7.5k chaos, excluding the creation cost of your base. This is post-base, so if you need to make that, that's of course going to be a little bit more investment. But once you do it, it's done, and then you're good to go for the rest of the league. So pretty cool there. Of course, we also have the scarabs that I used here. So that comes in at a cool like 3 or 350 kind of chaos range. And then we have Zana Nemesis, which you need to put on every map that doesn't have Nemesis on it already. So very cool. We come in at around 8,000 investment. So definitely a lot of chaos up front, but believe me, it pays off. So we've got here, we'll quickly add in back that. We come in here and we take a look. So currency by itself almost completely covers up the expenses. We're about 3,000 off, covering them off there. So we're already coming close to covering our expenses. That plus the simulacrums actually breaks us even, meaning all of the loot from the Delirium orbs is free. That is massive. That means it doesn't actually even matter what Delirium orb you put on there. The maps are pretty much paid for as long as you loot most of the high value stuff and you get a decent amount of exalts as your T1 currency. So that's very cool indeed, and definitely encourages you to try out some new things. So you can see, and you can take a look at the breakdowns yourself. I'll put this into the description for you guys to really get into the nitty gritty. As I mentioned though, I have excluded things like timeless splinters. So the overall number that you would make is probably higher in reality, but because I'm lazy, I have excluded things like skittering, incubators, and all that kind of stuff like that. So yeah, quite a fat amount of currency just from those 2 sections here. But when we get into the league stuff, we actually realize the power of this mechanic. With no real RNG drops and just kind of like consistent drops, with the only crazy thing being golden oils, which aren't actually that rare in my opinion. I've done a few of these now. We actually see that we're making pretty much the exact same amount as we're investing after everything, which is completely insane, and that is because of the premium on bulk blighted maps. So you can see here we got about 200 blighted maps just from doing 20 maps. So that's almost 10 blighted maps per map, and as I mentioned, we're not really taking these to their full potential either. and we're not doing T16s. T16s are worth about 40% more money if you're doing the blighted map orbs. So you can really amp this up and amp up your profits to astronomical levels, where you can probably get like something crazy like 70 or 80 exalts profit pretty consistently on T16 blighted orbs. Completely ridiculous. But anyway, let's move on to the uniques. So you can see here that I did get the big old fat calamitous visions coming in at around 3,000 chaos right for that one jewel. Pretty good. Of course, the other uniques didn't really even hold a candle to that. But this section by itself actually is worth as much as the simulacrums because of this one item drop. Definitely pretty crazy, but you know, it's not a rare drop. As I mentioned, among the cluster jewels, I think it's fairly like even. It just depends whether you get it or not. So that is all I have to say about that. Moving on though, let's take a look at the end result. So overall, we made 70 exalts profit. That is absolutely insane. That comes out to 3.5 exalts profit per map. Whoa. That is more than I can say I've ever made mapping, which is completely insane. This can be done in like 1 day session. So, you know, you're looking at making a mirror every other day just by, you know, doing 20 maps. Now, I have to say though that these maps do take about 10 minutes to run and loot if you're quick. Maybe you can be a bit better if you have a better build than mine, I'm not sure, but it definitely is quite a long time. The upside though is that generally you can be pretty much fully self-sufficient, especially if you're running the Scarab Delirium orbs. The reason for that is because the only real thing you need to do is buy fractured fossils, because you don't have to roll sextants. You're going to get your own scarabs if you're running the Scarab one, or you're doing it like kind of like casually as well. And then you just whack the map in, you roll Nemesis and you're good to go, which is very, very refreshing and a good change of pace in my opinion. And you only have to do that every 10 to 15 minutes. So very, very cool indeed. Very, very nice. So let's assume though that we didn't get this insane calamitous vision. So if we take that away, you're still looking at a cool 50 exalts profit, which is more than I can say about any other mapping content that I've ever done. Even Legions didn't come close to how powerful this is. I don't think that there's any way that you would make 70 or 50 exalts profit in 25 ways or anything like that, even back in the day when they were cheap. So completely insane and very, very, very profitable. And we haven't even seen the ends of this yet. We can push this so much further, and I fully intend to do so. So with all that said, I'm interested to hear about what you guys have to say in the comments. You know, it's just completely insane. You can see here that I didn't even include stuff like teal oils. You know, I mean, maybe we could sell them in bulk for 1 siege. I'm not sure. We'd have to see. But really, really crazy. You definitely get a lot of reward, but a lot of risk. If you've seen my previous video, you'll understand that there is definitely risk involved with this. But it's extremely fun. And finally, there's difficult content that is rewarding in PoE. Just because of the way you can stack all the modifiers, it's incredibly fun. So where do we go next? Well, we have plenty of places to go next, of course. So I've been trying out Blighted Delirium mobs here, but to get an accurate representation of how good these are versus the other Delirium mobs, we're going to need to do 20 maps of some different types. So I fully plan to do Skittering and Obscured to post the results for you guys on how profitable they are. And what we'll be looking at for them is the following. We'll be looking at this column here, League stuff. How much can you expect to earn from the tiles themselves? Around getting 10 or 11 of them per map. And I'm going to try and keep that pretty consistent. I'm not going to change the amount of investment, and we'll see which Delirium orb reigns supreme. So very, very cool. I do have to say though, about the blighted maps, there is a few upsides because there's not like a billion scarabs to pick up. It's not as punishing if you do die and lose a few portals, because you can loot the whole map in 2 or 3 versus needing like all 6 for scarabs. And there is also the fact that the maps sell instantly, and you can sell like bulk of them, like 40 of them sell at a time for more than you can expect on an individual basis. So absolutely incredible. Couldn't recommend pursuing this as a league goal more. It is incredibly fun to do and very, very rewarding. And it's super fun just to like get in there and smash a bunch of crazy monsters with your really, really cool overpowered build. So with that said, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this insight into Delirium maps and the insane loot you can expect if you get into this. With all that said, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one or over on my stream if you catch me live. Until then, cheers.